What's the significance of this secret altar? Well, you're about to find out as we explore even more secrets and hidden details in Mario Kart World. That's right, even beyond the more than 100 we've already covered. So let's get to them. Okay, so we've already covered a ton of secrets in Mario Circuit, but we did miss a super subtle one that's really easy to miss, because if you jump onto this portion of the infield, you'll find this odd-looking structure, which, as it turns out, is actually the winner's podium. As in, the same winner's podium from the original Super Mario Kart, which makes it a perfect photo-taking opportunity. The only thing missing is the giant Cheep Cheep balloon. Oh wait, there it is! Over at Starview Peak, one of the things I forgot to mention last time is how you can find a picture of the Comet Observatory within the library. Previously, I had pointed out that Shy Guy Bazarre had a heavy floral theme, which made sense given that Daisy had an entire palace here, which also explained the multiple references to Super Mario Land that could be found here, given that was Daisy's first game. But what I didn't point out is a special detail that brings both of those elements together, because if you take a close-up look at the decoration on top of the fountain just in front of the palace, you might notice that it too is a flower. But not just any flower, but the Super Ball flower from Super Mario Land! Talk about a deep cut! Speaking of track themes, I forgot to mention how Dry Bones Burnout has a really cool Day of the Dead aesthetic going on, and as part of it, you can find this unique altar complete with a memorial plaque, on which we can see two different sets of numbers, one preceded by a B and the other a D. And if I had to guess, they're the birth and death years of whatever this creature was, having been born in 1688 and died in 1988, meaning it lived for 300 years, not a bad run. But here's the thing, at least one of those numbers has some secret significance, being the 1988 one, which ironically happens to be the birth year of Dry Bones himself, with the launch of the Japanese version of Super Mario Bros. 3 in 1988. We've also discovered another extremely subtle detail in Airship Fortress, because if you look up in the room with the flame jets, you might spot what they're attached to that moves them back and forth, being bolt lifts, as in the same ones Mario used in a variety of games, like in Mario 3 or Super Mario Galaxy. Pretty neat, huh? Over at Peach Beach, you can ring the giant bell. Peach Stadium isn't just a stadium themed to Princess Peach, but also doubles as a transit center for the entire kingdom. Not only are there multiple bus stops, but there's an entire train platform too. You can even find departure signs by each one, though oddly no arrival signs. In any case, it makes a lot of sense to have a transit center here given Peach Stadium's central location. Now, the entire stadium is obviously themed to Peach's castle, right down to the stained glass window, or windows in this case. But in a fun twist, once you unlock mirror mode, you can access it in free roam by driving through those same windows. But that's not the cool part. The cool part is how the sound effects and ripple effect are a direct callback to Super Mario 64 and how Enter the Paintings worked. Finally, in a cute touch, did you catch that the lampposts and the backside of the stadium lighting are all themed to mushrooms? Which really helps cement the idea that Peach's castle is found in the Mushroom Kingdom. Also, did you catch that the giant lake just north of the castle is in the shape of a power star? With the two islands being its eyes. Get it? Islands? Whatever. It's hard to tell at ground level, but you can easily see it on the map. So in our previous video, we pointed out that Koopa Construction has some competition, or should I say had some competition, based on the state of the construction project over at Dandelion Depths, which was being handled by none other than the Perry Beatty Bud Construction Company. Under construction? Really? Not only is the project site clearly incomplete with exposed beams and unfinished structures everywhere, but it's been long since reclaimed by nature, with ivy and overgrowth all over the place, including entire trees growing up through the steel structures. So knowing this, the state of the ads in the building in Crown City suddenly makes a lot more sense. Now that's what I call environmental storytelling. The West Greens Park sign just outside of Crown City was established in 1992. You know, just like Mario Kart itself. And even though it's probably a coincidence, the flat pathways found within the park are a bit reminiscent of the Mode 7 tracks found in the original game. There's a neat touch at Dino Dino Jungle that happens only at night. Because if you take a close look at any of the lampposts, you'll see a bunch of flies swarming around. But as soon as daylight hits, they'll fly away. I don't know if you noticed, but the river cruise tours over at Faraway Oasis are run by none other than Toad himself. Which kinda makes sense given that Toad's well known for exploring, right? Which also explains why one of the nearby banners is a direct reference to Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. And while we're here, have you read the fun signs that lead up to the crazy jump off of Pride Rock? I like the ones that warn you of a cliff at the last second, and another wishing you good luck. Oh, and that buckle up one reminded me of something.
Buckle up!
While ascending the tree in Acorn Heights, you might notice this interesting set of 7 stained glass windows. But what's more interesting is how they each correspond to a secret below, being a banner for each of the first 7 Grand Prix, with there being a little alcove above each one. Almost looks like a perfect place for a trophy, doesn't it? Which actually explains why the cutscene for unlocking the special cup takes place here, even if the trophies themselves never actually appear in those alcoves. Although they are referenced on the map that appears during the credits too, with a handwritten statement saying, "I found a bunch of trophies. Definitely look into this." Speaking of things to look into, a notebook later in the credits also teases a big discovery over at the Great Question Block ruins. Now, I had already briefly touched on the Lakitu statues that can be found there in our previous video, but this notebook entry inspired me to take a closer look, as it actually breaks down that statue to some degree, such as how at least the Lakitu portion is directly related to the ancient art of Lakitu found over in Desert Hills, which we also talked about a bit in our previous video, so this may suggest some kind of relationship between the two regions, or at least the historical significance of Lakitu. Moving on, the notebook then points out that the cloud portion is obviously Lakitu's cloud, but below that, it highlights one of the strange symbols you can find on the block portion. And if we take a look at the real thing, we can see a 4x5 grid made up of 5 different icons. Unfortunately, as far as I can tell, they don't have any kind of direct translation, unlike the hieroglyphics we discovered over in Desert Hills. But that doesn't mean they don't represent anything at all, such as how this one appears to be Lakitu himself, or at least everything above the top half of his head, even right down to his 3 little hairs. Now the icon to the right is likely a sun or maybe a star, and then to the right of that is a heavily stylized question mark, which makes a lot of sense given the region. Now, as for the final 2 symbols, I really have no idea, so let me know in the comments below if you know what they may be. Anyways, let's get back to the notebook, as the next portion down is kind of interesting, as it suggests that blocky thing with a diamond pattern is a shell? How the shell did they arrive at that idea? Even looking at the most similar block on the statue itself offers no additional insight. But here's a weird thing, this block in particular isn't exactly where it is on the diagram, as this one's further down. However, there actually is a very similar block exactly where we'd expect to find it. But this one has a few extra details, such as what appears to be the head and neck of a turtle, which we can see even clearer from the other side. And it even appears to have what might be a pair of legs too. So is this a Koopa Troopa? And it might explain why there's a Koopa shell at this point in the diagram. A big discovery indeed. Now as for what it all means, I have no freaking clue. Over at Sky High Sundae, you may have noticed that the trees are decorated with all kinds of Mario elements, including Mario Kart items like shells, blue shells, fire flowers, and stars. But beyond that, there's also Yoshi fruit and the double cherry power-up from Super Mario 3D World. But there's also one more reference that's super easy to miss, even though it's at the very start of the track. Because did you notice these square cookie decorations? Well, they're not just any squares, but are actually the rotating blocks first seen in Super Mario World. And while we're in this room, we have to point out that the wallpaper has all kinds of Mario elements on it too. And if you happen to look up, you might notice that the ceiling's not only made up of graham crackers, but the ceiling fans are made of wafers too. Of course, nearly everything here is themed to some kind of frozen treat. Even the benches are made of popsicle sticks. And we have to say, that's pretty cool. And speaking of cool details, how about some more environmental ones, such as how in colder regions you can see your character's breath. Over at the tribute to Vanilla Lake, you can find multiple sets of freezies make up the mountainside. It's time for some more pedestrian details, such as how crosswalks aren't there just for the sake of it, but they're actually used by NPCs, with the traffic even stopping for them. Did you know that all 3 types of roaming travelers each have 2 different idle animations? Shy Guys have this cute little stretching animation, and will also clean their mask and then praise the sun. Whereas Yoshi's will look around and do this really cute stretch. Finally, Toads will look to the sky as if they spotted something important. In addition to taking a moment to loosen up those limbs. In our previous video, I showed how the buses are actually functional in this game. And as it turns out, that applies to the cars too, as they don't all just drive around completely aimlessly. You can easily see for yourself by going to a parking lot or this parking garage. And not only will you see cars coming and going, but you can even follow them in and see exactly where they park. They'll even turn the engine off too. Hell, you might even see them exit the vehicle after parking and go walk around. In some cases, you can even see them entering nearby businesses like this motel here. You might also catch what appear to be random citizens walk back to their car and literally hop in, before driving away. Yeah, these details are pretty nuts for our Mario Kart game. And if you liked all the secret details we discovered, we've got a lot more where they came from. Over 100 in fact back in part 1 of our secrets video, so make sure to give it a watch if you haven't already. And of course make sure to click the subscribe button for plenty more from us. And with that, we'll catch you later. Bye everyone!